Live. Good afternoon and welcome everybody. My name is Lori Luzader and I'm the Executive Director of Special Kids Connect. Special Kids Connect is a resource center in Monterey County and we're dedicated to supporting families who have children and young adults with special needs. We do that in a number of ways, one of which is connecting parents with resources in our community who can help them at various stages in their child's life. And we are excited today to welcome Relindis Diaz. Relindis is a program manager for Monterey County Behavioral Health. She has extensive experience in working with children and families from diverse backgrounds. Relindis is endorsed by the state of California as an infant, family, early childhood mental health specialist and a reflective practice facilitator. Relindis is certified in child-parent psychotherapy, which is an evidence-based practice for addressing trauma for children and their families. She's currently the manager for the Monterey County Behavioral Health Program that serves children 0 to 5 and their families after trauma. Welcome, Relindis.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, today's topic is a topic that we've not covered yet in a webinar. We've covered several during this COVID-19 period, but it is the one topic that is definitely growing in importance among the families that we serve, and that is the mental health and well-being of particularly our parents who are sheltering in place right now with children with a wide range of behavioral issues, different kinds of needs that require the parents to kind of be on 24/7. And so we are so excited, and I'm quite honored that you jumped at the chance to be able to help us today without hesitation. Thank you so much. I do know that you are working on a really exciting program with Monterey County Behavioral Health. It's called the Forward Together Initiative. And I'd like to start out by maybe having you tell us a little bit about what that initiative is all about.
Well, I'd be glad to talk a bit about that. It's our first endeavor to have something that is really public facing and available to anyone in Monterey County who'd like to participate. With your permission, I'll share my screen so you can see the areas that we're looking at for this. We are offering some opportunities to engage in mindfulness and self-care. We have a large variety of parenting topics, some of them mental health focused, some of them strictly parenting focused. We have some programs for educators to provide them with an opportunity to get a little bit of grounding in this time where we're all kind of learning as we go. We have a program for new mothers who are experiencing some postpartum issues related to perhaps depression or anxiety. We have Teen Connect, which is an opportunity for teens to come together and just share about what it's like to be at home all the time now. And then again, we don't want to forget all of our community, and so we have Seniors Connect. Perhaps the parenting and the mindfulness might be the most useful for the families that are with us today, but any one of them can be accessed. And the fastest way to get there is just to put in your search browser, Monterey County Together, Forward Together, and it will take you right to the page that you'd want to access.
That's pretty amazing. So these are support groups that are meeting virtually, correct? And they're using Zoom?
They're Zoom meetings. They can be accessed by phone as well. Each meeting has a very short presentation to kind of frame the topic. And then after the short presentation, the lines are opened up and the facilitators are available to chat with those who are calling in and help them think about their concerns and what resources might be a good match for them.
That's wonderful. We've sent some parents, or recommended that some parents take part in them, and those that have really gotten a lot out of it. So I'm so thrilled that you guys are doing that.
Thank you so much for letting us share about that. As I said, it's a new thing for us to really be reaching out into the public, but we know that these are difficult times, and we know that families and parents are having concerns. So we really wanted to have something that was available to the entire community.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And again, Forward Together, if you just put it in your browser and you put Monterey County, it pops right up at the top. That's exactly how I found it. So
and while we're speaking in English and calling it Forward Together, that every workshop that is offered through that process is also offered in Spanish.
That's wonderful. And I'm glad you said that, because we'll remind people at the end as well. But this particular webinar today is in English only, but we have one of your coworkers, Suzanne Battaglia, Dr. Battaglia, will be working with our Spanish-speaking families on Friday evening, and that information is on our website. It's part of our every Friday Spanish-speaking parent support group that we have at Special Kids Connect, and that's done via Zoom as well. So if you're interested, or you have a friend that might be interested in the Spanish version of kind of what we're talking about today, then I encourage them to go to specialkidsconnect.org and click on the links for that particular support group. So we're inviting families to please ask questions. There should be a Q&A or a chat option in the bottom of your Zoom box. Please feel free to ask questions during this webinar, and we'll get to as many as we can today in the hour that we have together. But I'm going to start off with a question that we have from a parent who has an adult daughter, and I realize, Relindis, that the questions that we're asking are really going to be kind of where our parents are at right now with the struggles that they have. I also recognize, and I think our parents do too, that there are no easy answers to any of this. If there was a magic wand that either you or I could spread over our families, we certainly would do that, because I know that my heart hurts really deeply for what they're going through right now. And it is kind of, I think, it's kind of comforting for some of the families to recognize that they're not alone in this.
That's right. That's right. I think that's so important, Lori, that we know we're not alone in this.
Yeah. And I think if there's anything that we accomplished today, that is the one message that I want to get out there, is that they're not alone. So let me throw this first question at you, and you can let me know what you think. My adult daughter doesn't understand what is happening, and she cannot go outside and be with other people. She has medical issues that put her at extreme risk for complications if she were to get the virus. When I come home from the grocery store, she wants to come hug me, but I cannot let her touch me until I've changed my clothes and cleaned myself up so that I don't infect her. She gets very frustrated and angry and becomes hard to control. This makes it even more stressful for me.
Gosh, that's so hard. And one of the things we know is that our kids really count on the rituals we have with them for grounding and feeling whole and safe. And it sounds like hugging in return is a very big deal to your daughter. Just thinking broadly about what other options might have. Perhaps there is an option for creating a new ritual for coming in during this time. When our kids have big needs, it's not enough to say things in words to them, that I'm just trying to clean up to keep you safe, may be too hard to process at a time when she's counting on the connection that comes from a hug. But I wonder if perhaps there would be the possibility of creating a song that you and she have sung in the past at joyful or soothing times, and use that song to help kind of bridge that little bit of time from when you're coming in to when you feel safe enough to hug her. Sometimes a melody is more powerful than words, and rhythms tend to help our brains settle down a little bit. So I think that's an option to try. And certainly if that isn't the one that fits for your daughter, it may spark some thoughts that you have about things you've done at other times that might be helpful to incorporate. But my sense is that the ritual of hugging and being hugged could possibly be extended by adding another link there that can be used to help bridge that gap.
That's wonderful. I know you had some slides that you were interested in sharing with us, and I think that kind of carries us from that question into the topics on those slides.
Yeah, I'd love to share that with you, and I'll go ahead and share my screen. I can see questions coming in, and I'm happy to collect them with you, Lori, and as we think that it's appropriate to stop the slides and start answering questions, we can do that, or we can go all the way through. We'll let the participants lead us in this.
That sounds good.
My apologies. I am not the most skilled of online technology just yet.
Yeah, so neither one of us are going to quit our day jobs to become. I don't see that happening.
So when we started thinking about what might be helpful today, we really wanted to acknowledge that many people right now are feeling overwhelmed, isolated, and with just too much to do. And it reminds me, even in my own day, that of a line that came from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And I always see Gene Wilder in my mind's eye when I say this, but it is a time of so little to do and so much time. No, wait, strike that and reverse it. It is a time when there is a lot at every turn of the day. And that's why we're together today to talk a little bit about that. I just always like to start with what we tell ourselves influences how we feel. I'm stuck inside and there's no one to help really tells us to feel isolated or anxious and keeps us in that state of distress that is really hard on our bodies, it's hard on our mind, it's hard on our spiritual selves. And how we might think about stepping beyond the stuckness and the isolation really can be hard to get to. It might really be hard to imagine that there could be a light at the end of the tunnel. And I just want to pause with that because that's real. It's real that it is a time of overwhelm. And anything I have to say today is not going to change that, but perhaps we can move through it together. I do want to offer some gentle tips that may help. This is not advice by any stretch of the imagination because I can only be inside my own skin. I really can't be inside your skin. But I know that if you take a breath, a really, really full breath into your belly and let it out slowly, that it tells your brain that you're safe. This is hard, doesn't change that, but you're safe. When you stay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, you and I talked about that a little bit before.
Yeah.
I've never been a big proponent of taking those deep breaths, But I have found over the last few weeks that I find myself breathing like all of a sudden rapid breathing and not realizing I'm doing it. And so just stopping myself and consciously making sure that I take that really deep breath. It is amazing
Yes,
how
it is.
there's just that little moment of calm that comes over you after you do that.
It's about being in the present moment. One of the things that gets us so excited and so overwhelmed so quickly is that we are thinking about the next step and the next step and the next step. And when we stop and take breath all the way into our bellies and blow it out slowly, we are right here in this moment, which is the only thing we really have any control over. So it does help, and I can go all nerdy on the neurobiology of it. So I'm going to really just slow myself down and not go there. But it does start a whole process in the brain that helps you return to a state of sense of safety. As does staying as close to our normal routines as we can stay. And the reason that routine is helpful is that it's grounding. It's providing us anchors in our day. If you've ever tried to get up and start moving, and coffee is your normal routine, what happens is you start to pick up anxiety because you miss that first anchor, that first signpost that this is a day that you're starting, and this is a day you will understand. So our routines, whether it's a cup of coffee in the morning or a morning yoga session, they help us get prepared for the challenges of the day. And when you are grounded by staying close to your routines, it is grounding for your child as well, because our kiddos, whether they're 5 or 25, they are reading our cues, our emotional cues, and they understand our moods and our anxieties better than our words. So getting ourselves grounded also grounds our kiddos.
Yeah, and I think, Relindis, that's been, that has been one of the things that has been sort of a paradox as we've gone through so much of the last few weeks. So many of our families went from going to school on a normal schedule to having it abruptly stopped, then having some kind of interaction with the school, whether it was via computer or packets, then going on spring break. Then coming back from spring break,
Right.
and wondering if, is this only going to be another couple of weeks, and then being told that it's going to be for the rest of the school year. The parents that we've been talking to that have really seen some positive changes have been those that even when there's a vacation time or when there's really no other reason to get up early in the morning, they've put their families and their kiddos on these routines that they report have really made a huge difference in
No doubt.
everybody's well-being.
No doubt about that. When the routine is our anchor, our signpost, our landmark, if you will, we don't carry as much anxiety. It's like it's like driving. If you had to think about every step in driving, you would never get anywhere because you have very many things going on all at one time. So the routine lets us put some things on the back burner and move some things to our conscious thought, and that allows us to accomplish more. So hats off to anybody who's finding routine to be helpful, and keep doing that. One of the things that I found really helpful is that when we remind ourselves, when I remind myself of what I've done in the past to get through other hard times, I can accomplish a lot more. And that may be the same for you. When you remind yourself of what you've done to get through other hard times on the journey you're taking with this child you adore, you will find that you have skills that you've used that you can access now. And our kids have different abilities and different challenges. And you as parents, you understand this best about your child. You can use what you know about your child's abilities and challenges to tell the story of what's happening in our world right now. It may not be in words, it may be in any number of ways, but when you tell your child in your child's way of understanding what's going on and what you're doing to keep yourself and your child and your family safe, it will help your child feel safe. And as our kids can take their own breath of safety, they will have less need to show you they're anxious with behaviors and with leaning into their challenges. They'll be able to lean into their strengths and abilities. I want to acknowledge that time issues are real, and it feels like there's never enough time to take care of ourselves, particularly when we're taking care of kids who have a lot of needs. But the truth is that it should be the first step, that taking care of yourself, because when you're grounded, others around you will follow your lead, your child, your spouse, your other children who perhaps have different needs from the child we're thinking about today. When you're grounded, others will follow. And I think I'll take a little pause now. Perhaps we'll think about some questions that have come up. I have a final slide that might help us think about how we use some of the elements that are available to us, even on the busiest of days, to help us with that grounding.
Awesome. Yeah, looks like we've got some questions coming in here. So let's take this one. The most stressful thing for me is that I'm a single mom and my daughter, who is 20, is cognitively unable to understand any of this. You were just talking about trying to explain it to them in terms that they understand. I've been trying to explain it to her again and again, and she simply doesn't have the ability to understand. And we are stuck at home with me explaining it again and again, which is making this a struggle. Do you have any thoughts?
Gosh, again, words are not our best friends when our kids are anxious. Perhaps the best friend we have is that finding some grounding for ourselves and just honoring that whatever is going on for your child is hard for your child too. And what do you do when things are hard in general? Perhaps it's not understanding why we can't go out, or perhaps it's not understanding why when we do go out, people are wearing masks. Perhaps it is about how we connect when things are hard and how I am with you even when you don't understand. That allows a 20-year-old child who's not cognitively processing the information to just settle back into a rhythm with mom.
Here's another one. My 30-year-old son was in a day program that closed. He's with me 24 hours a day and he requires constant supervision. Those 5 to 6 hours a day that he was in his day program would give me a chance to do the things that I enjoyed. Oh, this breaks my heart. Now all the things that bring a life of value are gone.
Oh. That has to be so hard. It feels like there are no words to say except perhaps to link my heart with yours, Lori, and to this mama who is finding that there's no time for the things that help her renew, refill her bucket, if you will, so that she can continue to be a rock for this grown son. I'm wondering what small moments could be carved. I'm thinking about the time when I had a 2-year-old who was very, very needy and really could not entertain herself and could not be without me. And I used to sometimes lock myself in the bathroom for just a few moments of coming down, coming into my sense of my own self. And I wonder if there might be someone who could provide for this grown son who can give you a few minutes, even if it's just in the bathroom, breathing and holding yourself in esteem and with compassion.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I know that we, even in our parent support groups, when we meet with parents, that there are times when the parent has the screen in front of them, like you and I, and then the parent disappears for a few minutes because they can't just sit. And I will say that being a part of those support groups for some of our families has been very comforting because they're not the only ones doing that.
That's right.
So we're very understanding, and certainly the other parents are very supportive of those kinds of situations. And I feel like that, again, we talked at the beginning, just how important it is for these families to find some way to connect with other families that are sharing those difficulties. It's amazing that the burden that we carry on our shoulders is lifted just a little bit when we're standing even in a Zoom meeting next to somebody else who can help us carry that burden a little bit.
Right. Or might be able to say, you know what, this is what I tried and it helped. Have you thought about this? It's the thing about us is that we cannot help but be in our own perspective all the time, right? We can't see outside of the things we've learned through our own life experiences. But someone who's experiencing something similar, might be able to say, have you thought about this? And then we have two perspectives to lean into. And when we broaden our perspectives, when we invite others' ideas in, sometimes we can find some relief in that. So that's a lovely idea to think about. How do you support groups to connect and get ideas?
Yeah. So we have this question that just came in. I have a teen boy with high functioning autism who has a lot of anxiety and often explodes. His two younger siblings, a 13-year-old girl and a 9-year-old boy, are imitating that behavior, and I'm trying to keep the peace.
Wow. That is a big struggle. And the younger children may be having their own anxiety and kind of trying out your son's method of reducing anxiety through kind of the explosion of feelings that feels like just horrible to have it all happening in your house. And I wonder if you could think about doing something that would allow for that expulsion of energy and anxiety, but in a more controlled way. I will share with you that my daughter lives in a community up north, and it's they have started the most amazing thing where in the evening at sundown, they all in this community go out and they howl together, which sounds really odd.
You know what? That was on the news or something.
Great release. And so finding a way to make room for the anxiety, the pent up energy from being cooped up, the challenges with not being able to step out with friends or be in school and get a break. Whether our children have special needs or not, this is a hard time. And so if you can make a ritual out of that expulsion of energy, anxiety pent up, it might end up being fun for your kids and for you. So again, that's that thinking out of the box, and it may not work, but it's something to try.
Yeah, I can certainly understand though how that, boy, that's tough.
Yeah, yeah, that is tough for sure.
When you're dealing with imitating behavior and you're sitting there thinking, look, I have enough to deal with one of you. I don't need all three of you doing this. I'm sure that's difficult. Goodness.
For those of you who've never done it, howling is an awesome way to expunge that, to get that energy out. I did that for a few years with my highly energetic, she was no longer 2 by that time, but my highly energetic child. We would, on full moons, go out into the countryside around where we were living, and we would howl. And it was actually quite a lovely bonding experience with her. So it feels really good in your body to let that kind of sound out. Worth a try.
Well, I will tell you that there have been some moments during this time when I've, in my car by myself, screamed, and it does feel really good.
It does.
I think I have got to get it out of my system.
That's right.
So, okay, so here's another question.
Okay.
I am on 24/7. I used to have some alone time, and now as a single parent, I have to do this all by myself. My 18-year-old cannot occupy herself or even sit still and watch a movie to give me a break.
Wow. Wow. That is really, really tough. And being on 24/7 is exhausting. And when we are not sleeping well, it is really, really hard to recover and make it through a day. It's really hard to recover from any kind of disruption to the day. It's really hard to recover from feeling that empty. I'm wondering if you are getting good sleep, at least renewing in that way. I'm wondering who you have in your life that you can just vent with, to let some of that out. Wondering if there's anybody who could provide you even just a little bit of perhaps Zoom respite. So to Zoom with your child, to have a conversation or some other kind of engagement so that you could take a short break. I'm wondering if there have been other times in your life when you've had to think about somebody who could support you that might also be available to you now. And then just know that we are really holding you with compassion, because you're doing some very, very big work, being on that much. Yeah, just be really, really helpful to think about where you could carve out a little bit of time for you.
Yeah, I know that, we do, Special Kids Connect has started doing Zoom lunches with kids on Friday. We do them with kids and with young adults. We actually have had some older adults with developmental disabilities join us, and it's been super fun. And I think one of the things that has been really, it brings us a lot of joy to be able to hang out with them over the lunch period. But I've heard from several parents that they did not think that their child would sit in front of the computer screen for 30 minutes. I mean, it's 30 minutes. It's no more, no less. We keep it right at half an hour.
Predictability is key.
Right. Well, and we keep it moving. We're asking questions. We make it as interactive as possible, and it isn't for everybody, but And the parents certainly cannot walk away, but it has been a point of respite for some of the families, because at least there is some joy, and we all know this as parents. There is so much joy when you see your child having fun,
Yes.
them
Yes.
engaged in something, and you see their peers interacting with them. In a way, though it doesn't give you any quiet time, it is a little bit of time that you can reflect, and just sort of be in the moment, and kind of enjoy that. So, but it is tough. We all remember too what it was like to be on 24/7 when you had an infant at home, and you
That's right.
were like, please go to sleep for a while so that I can get a break. So I can
And
imagine.
yes, yes. And when your infant sleeps, you're trying to decide if you're going to do laundry, the dishes, or take a nap yourself. And I used to think that being productive was the most important thing to do, but it actually would have been the nap that would have allowed me to do a better job of what I was doing. So my encouragement is in those moments, if your child rests, sleeps, or can partake in a Zoom support group, a Friday lunch with Special Kids Connect, use that time to take care of you. It's so important.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to belittle the challenges that families go through, because one of the things that I keep getting reminded from my parents is that the difference between what I went through with an infant and what they're going through is, I knew that at one point in one day that my child would outgrow it. And I
That's
think
right.
that's the part that's really, that makes my heart hurt a lot for them, is because we don't know when this is going to end, and this isn't something that their child's just going to simply outgrow. So as we start to hear stories about, we don't know whether this is going to continue through the summer, we don't know what the fall is going to be like. I think that's when we can kind of get inside of our head and really, really hurt. I mean, that's where the mental health challenges come in.
It is very hard to hold hope when we don't have those signposts of this will end when. And it's really hard to hold hope when we are concurrently grieving that our kiddos, whether our child is 5 or 33, it's really hard to hold hope um, that it's going to get better when I'm also grieving that my child is not going to reach that milestone. And the grief is real, and the challenge is real, and we don't want to make light of that in any way, shape, or form. Um, so I
So
agree.
are there things that, as you're working with families that are going through this, and we've been sheltering in place now for what, 7 weeks about? I hear a lot of people compare this to the grieving process, and I'm curious as to, um, are we at a stage now where there's some things that we should anticipate that we're going to be feeling, and some tunnels that we're going to be walking through that we should think about as we're going forward?
As with most challenges that have some grieving to go with it, you might find yourself angry at a time when you don't anticipate being angry. It might be a surprise to you. It's occasionally possible that you'll have waves of hopelessness, um, that you will try to find an alternative by kind of bargaining things away. We know that those are very, very common elements of grief. And to know that that may be what you're doing in the moment may be hard to remember that this is normal, that this is universal, and that it is not permanent. You will not permanently be angry. You will not permanently be depressed. You will not permanently be in a state of negotiating. But those are states of grieving that are not unexpected given what we're going through, and not to be unexpected given that nothing that we knew 7 weeks ago is in place right now. We would not be connected to our living if we didn't have some elements of those kinds of grief experience.
Okay, so we have another question here. My children go with their dad on the weekends, and that's when I lose it. The full impact of all of this hits me the hardest during the quiet times.
That's the challenge, isn't it? When we are busy, and while busyness has its frustrations, while we are busy, we can stave off the sadness, we can stave off the grieving. But when it gets quiet, when the work slows down, when our child is asleep, when our children are visiting their dads, it all comes crashing in on us. And that is really a time of holding self-compassion when we can, to know that this grief in this time of being is universal. It is something to be honored. It's not a bad thing. With grieving comes some potential for healing that doesn't happen in the very busyness of caring for somebody else or tending to the duties that make up the lists of our day's functioning. Grieving is real and needs to be honored. And to the extent that you can hold compassion for yourself in those moments, do. Certainly from afar, I am holding compassion for you. I know from talking to Lori this past week that her heart is so open to the work you all are doing and the feelings that you all are having. So energetically from the universe, there is a great deal of compassion for you. And my hope is that you will find it for yourself as well. Lori, you're muted.
Can you hear me now? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that one of the things that I'm wondering, because we've heard that from other parents too, where, it's when in the times when they do actually get a break, that there's that they're immobilized. And it makes it doubly hard because there are so many things that you're thinking you could be doing right now, and
That's right.
you're unable to move. And are there some tricks or some tools that can help you process through that quicker? So that in a way that you can still be functional and feel at the end that you've done your grieving, but you've also can feel good about some of the things that you were able to accomplish as well. I'm just throwing that out there.
And I appreciate that, Lori. In part, I appreciate it because that's how we in general think grief should be, kind of like perhaps going through a car wash. You start here, go through, you come out, and you're done. And unfortunately, grief isn't like that, right? Grief holds us as long as it needs to hold us. And the immobilization that sometimes comes in the grieving process really is about honoring that our bodies, our minds, and our spirits are all affected by grieving. And the longer we hold it in, the less we honor that it is real, the harder it is for us to move through it. And so if it takes a whole weekend of grieving, and you don't get the dishes and the laundry done, I think that's still good work for that weekend, right? It is an accomplishment. It is a huge piece of work, if you will, to do that much grieving. And then when you're done with that piece of work and you've honored yourself for working that hard on your grieving, then you might do 5 dishes and bring your children home and be ready for them. It's more important than the rest of the stuff on the list of things to do. There are some things we can do that when we feel like we've done that work, where we can come back. There are some things we can do at the beginning of the day or the end of the day to nurture ourselves to get ready for what comes next. But I would say a good piece of grief work is hard work.
Yeah, and one of the things that we hear as well is that a lot of times when there's a 2-parent household, one parent's at a different path further down the road in the grieving process than the other. And that creates some frustration, and especially when, there are kids with challenging behaviors and developmental needs involved. Do you have any tips for how to maybe manage that marriage? And in terms of, recognizing kind of where the other person's at and offering support in a way that gets them through this together?
Yeah, that is the biggest challenge, right? It's easy to name what's happening with our kiddos. It is harder to name that we feel unsupported or disconnected from the person we really want to feel supported by and connected to. And finding those tools for most couples is hard. The tool to be able to say, that didn't feel very good, or I want to ask you to help me with this in this way. Those are skills that we're not so good at. We sometimes hold expectations that if you really love me, you would intuit that this is the way I need you to be. Or we think, oh, well, what's the use? I'm not going to get that support anyway. If a skill, an agreement can be made with a spouse to be able to say, this is how I need your help right now, or this is what I'm hoping you can offer to me right now, or this is the way I'd like you to help our child right now so that I can take a breather. Those are the healthier ways to get through these hard times. But it does take a social agreement, if you will, between spouses to be able to get to that point. And sometimes even starting that conversation is harder than we can conceive of, but it's worth a try. Resentments and expectations, those are all pieces of relationships that we need to think about ways to work through in our own individual relationships.
And I think too that it's important for, I think, all of us to remember that, especially when we've got families with multiple children and maybe one has special needs and the others are developing neurotypically, that, all of the family members are going through a grieving process at different rates and different speeds, and they all handle it differently. So when we see a sibling that we think is handling everything just fine and then suddenly explodes, that we need to remember that they're carrying their own troubles through this as well.
That's right. That's right.
Tough for everybody.
Yeah. The beautiful point, and very important to remember that it's going to take different shapes and different forms for different people, and it's got its own time in terms of when it will show up.
Yeah. Okay, so I think that's it for our questions. Did you have another slide that you wanted to share with?
I do. And I want to say thank you to everyone who put forward a question. I just, my hope is that if you take nothing else out of today, to lean into one person you can share what you're struggling with, and let that person kind of either hold you up or offer you an idea that you hadn't thought of. And then in addition to that, let me not give you my reminder screen. What I'd like to do is just share with you that a few breaths, a short walk, and some stretches don't take that much time, but they can make all the difference in the world. If you'd honor me or yourself at this point, we're just doing 3 breaths on my count, and just notice what it's like for you. So I'd like you to inhale to the count of 4. I'll count it out for you. Hold to the count of 4. Exhale to the count of 4, and we'll take 3 breaths together like that. So inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. And now stretch. Stretch your arms up and feel the expansion in your chest. And just notice. I've attached on your screen, you may see a YouTube link that will take you to a very short 10-minute practice of Qigong, which is a form of yoga, focused mostly on very gentle movement and breath, all of which can help expand the sense of presence that you have, the moment. The only real moment we have any control over is this present moment. And it can help with kind of lessening the burden. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you.
Relindis, thank you so much. And I also want to, the idea for having somebody from Monterey County Behavioral Health come on was from a parent suggestion. So I love that our parents are reaching out in that way and asking for that kind of help. I want to remind everybody before we close here about the Forward Together initiative that we talked about at the beginning. If you Google Forward Together in Monterey County, you'll get linked up to the website that offers a variety of different support group options for families, both English-speaking families and Spanish-speaking families, to take part in on a weekly basis. And they have been around for only about 3 weeks, but I know that you guys are doing some fabulous work with individuals in those courses, and so we're really grateful that that's something that our community has. Not every community has that, so we're feeling really good about that. Thank you. And I also want to remind families that we have 2 options for parent support in this distancing era. We have our Spanish-speaking parent support group that takes place on Friday evenings at 6 o'clock. And Dr. Suzanne Battaglia will be joining us from Monterey County Behavioral Health at that meeting this coming Friday. We have our Touch Base Tuesdays, which usually happen at this time between 1 and 2 on Tuesdays, and it's an opportunity for our English-speaking parents to drop in and to share and learn and just discuss things that might be of topic. And we don't have a set agenda for those. We just talk about whatever we feel like talking about at the time. And we also have our Zoom in for lunch on Fridays, which is an opportunity for kiddos to be able to eat lunch and hang out with their peers as well as with us. It truly is, from my staff's point of view, I think that's our high point of the week. And Relindis, I have to tell you, I'm learning a lot about Disney movies that I didn't before. So, and have really been given a hard time for my lack of knowledge of the Toy Story series in particular. So I've got to bone up on those. But it's a great time for kids to be able to connect and for parents to get a 30-minute breather while their kids occupied with us. And of course, if there's an emergency or any urgency in the family that needs to be addressed, please contact Monterey County Behavioral Health.
That is correct.
If it's an immediate emergency, please call 911. We don't want anyone out there trying to handle things that are beyond their capabilities at this point in time. So we want to remind people that we do have resources that are available in the community. And with that, Relindis, thank you so much again. You've been an absolute delight. And I look forward to hearing back from parents. And if you have ideas for future webinars, please let us know and we will make it happen. Thanks, Relindis. We'll talk to you.
Thank you. Be well, everyone.
Be well. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.